Today's story is one of the strangest mysteries the ocean has ever kept. It's the kind of story that makes you question what's real and what's still out there, hiding beneath the waves. On December 4th, 1872, a British ship called Dei Gratia was crossing the Atlantic when her crew spotted another vessel drifting silently on the horizon. No distress flags, no movement, just stillness. When they boarded her, they found everything perfectly in place. Food on the table, the captain's log open, cargo untouched, but not a single person on board. The crew, the captain, his wife, their little daughter, all gone. That ship was the Mary Celeste, the ghost ship that has haunted the sea for more than 150 years. And trust me, by the end of this story, you'll realize why no one ever truly solved what happened to her. So before we dive in, grab your favorite drink, maybe something to snack on, get comfortable, because this story is going to pull you deep into the unknown.
The morning air in New York Harbor was cold and sharp, the kind that carried both excitement and unease. On the docks of Pier 50, the crew of the Mary Celeste moved briskly, tying ropes, checking barrels, and tightening bolts. It was November 5, 1872, the day they would set sail across the Atlantic. The Mary Celeste herself stood proudly against the gray sky, a sturdy brigantine, 282 tons, her hull freshly painted and her sails folded like wings waiting for the wind. She wasn't a new ship, but she looked ready for the long voyage to Genoa, Italy, carrying nearly 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol. Captain Benjamin Briggs, a man known for his discipline and calm spirit, walked the deck slowly, inspecting every line and sail with the eye of a man who trusted nothing to chance. Beside him was his wife, Sarah Briggs, her hands gloved against the cold, holding the arm of their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia. They had chosen to bring the little girl on this voyage, a rare decision for such a trip, but the captain had faith in his ship, and even greater faith in the sea. Below deck, the crew worked with quiet precision. First Mate Albert Richardson, a capable sailor and loyal to Briggs, double-checked the cargo hold, making sure every barrel was secured. Second Mate Andrew Gilling, the youngest aboard, was writing a short note to his mother before they departed. Seaman Volkert Lorenzen and his companions Arian Martins, Boyle and Boz, all seasoned sailors, carried supplies aboard, food, navigational tools, and small comforts to make the months ahead bearable. Before leaving, the crew gathered briefly in the galley for a final warm meal on land. There was laughter, talk of the journey, and quiet confidence. No one could have imagined that within a few weeks their names would be etched forever in maritime mystery. By late afternoon, the Mary Celeste was ready. The last crates were loaded, the final documents signed. The ship's owner and a few dock workers waved from the pier as Captain Briggs gave the order. The gangway was raised, ropes fell loose into the water. The sails began to catch the evening wind. A deep hum of excitement ran through the ship as the Mary Celeste moved slowly away from the dock, her bow turning toward the open Atlantic. The crew could see the lights of New York City shrinking behind them, glowing softly under the fading daylight, a reminder of home that would soon disappear into the horizon. The captain stood at the helm, his hands steady on the wheel. The ship glided smoothly through the harbor waters, its masts creaking, ropes singing faintly in the wind. As night fell, the ocean stretched ahead, vast and dark, full of promise and danger alike. "Fair winds and following seas," Briggs whispered, "a sailor's blessing." The stars began to appear one by one above them. For the next few days, the Mary Celeste made steady progress eastward. leaving the American coastline far behind. The crew adapted to life aboard once again, shifts of work and rest, checking the rigging, cleaning the deck, and preparing meals in the tiny galley. Captain Briggs often wrote in his logbook. His entries were brief, neat, and calm, the handwriting of a man who had done this many times before. He recorded wind direction, speed, and minor adjustments in course. There was nothing unusual, nothing that hinted at trouble. Sarah often stayed below deck, reading to Sophia or writing letters she planned to mail once they reached Europe. The child's laughter sometimes echoed through the wooden corridors, bringing warmth to the otherwise cold and disciplined world of sailors. But even in the calm, there were moments when the ocean reminded them who was in charge. Sudden gusts of wind tested their grip on the ropes. The waves occasionally rose higher than comfort allowed. Still, the crew's spirits held strong. They trusted their captain, their ship, and their fate. As the days passed, the rhythm of the voyage settled. Meals at dawn and dusk, watch shifts under endless skies, stars guiding their way. The sound of creaking wood, the salt in the air, and the eternal heartbeat of waves against the hull became their new normal. By late November, the Mary Celeste was deep in the Atlantic Ocean, somewhere between the Azores and Portugal. The waters grew rougher and storms began to form in the distance. The crew stayed alert, but not afraid. The ship was sturdy, the cargo secured, and Briggs had crossed these waters many times before. In his final known log entries, the captain noted strong winds, choppy seas, and cloudy weather. But there was no sign of panic, no mention of damage, no hint of what was about to come. The Mary Celeste, strong and confident, pressed forward into the vast Atlantic, unaware that the journey she had begun so proudly from New York would soon end in silence, drifting alone. Her crew vanished without a trace, and somewhere behind her, in the great emptiness of the sea, the first whispers of one of history's greatest mysteries began to stir.
As the Mary Celeste pushed deeper into the Atlantic, the days settled into a familiar rhythm. The same salt air, the same creaking of the wood, the same endless blue horizon. To anyone watching, it was just another merchant voyage. But behind that calm routine were people, each with their own story, dreams, and reasons for being aboard that ill-fated ship. At the heart of it all was Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs, a man in his late 30s with sharp eyes and a calm, commanding presence. He was not just a sailor, he was a man of deep faith and discipline. Born in Massachusetts to a family of mariners, the sea was in his blood. Friends and family described him as steady, moral, and fiercely devoted to his wife and daughter. He had spent most of his life at sea, earning respect from every crew he ever led. Yet, even a man like Briggs could feel the pull between duty and home. Letters to his mother before the voyage hinted at weariness, a sense that he might soon leave the sea for good. This trip to Genoa, he wrote, might be his last before retiring to a quieter life. But fate had other plans. His wife, Sarah Elizabeth Cobb Briggs, shared his adventurous spirit, a woman of education and gentle character. She had sailed with her husband before. Though it was rare for a captain's wife and child to join such a voyage, Sarah trusted Benjamin completely. She brought along their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia Matilda, whose laughter had already brightened the ship's corridors in the first days of the journey. Then there was first mate Albert Richardson, a veteran sailor and family friend of the Briggses. Richardson was reliable and cautious, the kind of man you'd want beside you in a storm. He had worked under Briggs before and was trusted without question. Second mate Andrew Gilling, young and ambitious, came from New York. He had the energy of someone eager to prove himself. Those who knew him said he could be reckless at times, but no one doubted his skill at sea. The remaining 4 sailors were Volkert Lorenzen, Arian Martins, Boyle, and Boz, all hard-working seamen from Denmark and Germany, used to rough weather and long voyages. They weren't known to cause trouble. By all accounts, it was a solid crew, disciplined, experienced, and well-matched. Every ship has a personality, shaped by the people aboard it and the history carved into its timbers. And Mary Celeste had quite a history. She was launched in Nova Scotia in 1861, originally named Amazon. Her early years were anything but smooth. On her maiden voyage, her first captain fell ill and died. Shortly after, the ship ran aground in a collision. Repairs were made, but bad luck seemed to follow her. After several more voyages and another accident, the ship was sold, repaired, and eventually renamed the Mary Celeste, as if a new name could erase an old curse. By 1872, she was considered seaworthy and had a new owner, James H. Winchester, who also happened to be a close friend of Captain Briggs. Winchester trusted Briggs so much that he gave him command of the ship for this crucial voyage to Europe. The cargo, 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol, was valuable but not particularly dangerous if handled properly. It was being shipped from New York to Genoa, Italy, for use in the wine industry. Briggs had carefully checked every barrel before departure. Everything seemed in perfect order. The plan was simple: sail from New York, cross the Atlantic, stop near the Azores if needed, and then continue to Genoa. The voyage should have taken about a month, maybe a little more depending on the weather. Nothing in the ship's papers or captain's log suggested any reason for concern. And so, the Mary Celeste sailed. A small, tight-knit crew under a trusted captain, bound for Europe, with fair winds and a clean ship. But the Atlantic is vast and unpredictable. Storms rise without warning, waves can crush the strongest wood, and sometimes, even when the sea is calm, strange things happen that no one can explain. As the days turned to weeks, the Mary Celeste continued her steady course. Captain Briggs noted their progress daily: wind speed, heading, and distance covered. The last entries in his log would later be found: calm, routine, utterly ordinary. Nothing hinted at the disaster that was approaching. Somewhere along that lonely ocean route, something changed. Whether it was sudden or gradual, no one would ever know. What we do know is that the ship was never seen again, not with her crew aboard. For nearly a month, there was silence. No messages, no sightings, nothing but waves and wind where Mary Celeste should have been. And then, on December 4th, 1872, another ship, the Dei Gratia, a British brigantine sailing the same route, spotted a lonely vessel drifting aimlessly near the Azores. The sails were tattered. The ship seemed empty. That ship was the Mary Celeste. When the Mary Celeste finally reached Gibraltar, she looked like any other merchant ship arriving from a long voyage, except for one haunting detail. There was no crew to greet the dock workers, no voices calling out from the deck, just the sound of ropes tightening and the faint creak of wood as she touched the pier. Word spread quickly. Within hours, people gathered at the port, whispering, staring at the so-called ghost ship. The British authorities wasted no time, and investigation began immediately, led by Frederick Solly Flood, the Attorney General of Gibraltar. And let me tell you, this man was thorough, maybe even too thorough. He didn't believe in coincidences, and from the moment he saw Mary Celeste, he suspected foul play. The crew of the Dei Gratia, the men who had found and sailed her to safety, were questioned endlessly. Captain Morehouse, his officers, every sailor had to repeat their story again and again. Solly Flood was convinced something didn't add up. After all, how could a ship be found perfectly intact
with all its cargo untouched, yet completely abandoned. He started forming his own theories, wild ones. Maybe the Dei Gratia crew had killed the Mary Celeste crew and staged the whole discovery. Maybe they wanted the salvage money, but the facts just didn't fit. Mary Celeste had left New York 8 days before the Dei Gratia. The logs from both ships proved they weren't even close to each other until that moment of discovery. There was no way the British crew could have caught up to her, boarded her, and then invented a ghost story. Still, Solly Flood kept digging. He examined every inch of the Mary Celeste. The sails were partly torn, sure, but nothing catastrophic. The cargo of alcohol barrels, all 1,701 of them, was accounted for. Yet, when they checked the lower deck, they noticed something odd. A few barrels had leaked slightly. The smell of raw alcohol lingered faintly in the air. Some believe those fumes could have scared the crew. If the alcohol expanded and gases built up in the hold, the men might have thought an explosion was about to happen, forcing them to lower the lifeboat and wait it out, only to get lost at sea. It sounded possible, but again, there was no sign of panic, no burned wood, no explosion marks. Nothing. The official report listed the Mary Celeste as seaworthy, and the crew of the Dei Gratia were eventually cleared of all suspicion. They were granted a salvage award, though it was suspiciously low, barely 1/5 of what they expected. The authorities just couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Meanwhile, the story had already escaped Gibraltar. Newspapers in London and New York grabbed hold of it like wildfire. The phrase "ghost ship" began appearing in headlines. People were obsessed. Think about it. A ship found perfectly fine, cargo untouched, crew vanished into thin air. It was like a real-life horror story from the middle of the ocean. The public imagination exploded. Some said the crew had been abducted by pirates. Others whispered about sea monsters or some curse of the ocean that took whoever dared to sail too far. Some believed it was a punishment from God for daring to bring a child into dangerous waters. But the truth was, no one knew. Even after months of searching and countless interviews, there was nothing. No wrecked lifeboat found, no floating bodies, no survivor ever reported. It was as if the Mary Celeste had sailed through a crack in reality and lost her people to another world. And that uncertainty, that chilling silence, is what made the story explode worldwide. Mary Celeste became a legend overnight. Poets wrote about her. Newspaper columns invented stories of ghosts and madness, and every time the mystery was retold, it grew darker, stranger, and harder to separate from truth. Still, the logical minds, the scientists, the sailors, the investigators, couldn't rest. They needed an explanation, something rational, something that fit the evidence. And that's when the theories began. Dozens of them, each claiming to solve what really happened that day in the middle of the Atlantic. Some made sense, some were absurd, and some were far too strange to ignore.
Every time I think about this case, I imagine those sailors standing on that empty deck, the wind whispering through the torn sails, and I ask myself, what could possibly make a crew abandon a ship that was perfectly fine? That's the question that haunted everyone after the discovery of the Mary Celeste. And oh boy, people tried everything to explain it. Some theories were logical, others completely insane. So, let's dive into the ones that made the world scratch its head for more than a century. 1. The alcohol fume explosion theory. Alright, let's start with what many historians actually believe might have happened. Remember the cargo? Those 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol? Some of them were leaking. Now picture the ship's hold filled with invisible fumes, thick, flammable, just waiting for a spark. The crew might have smelled it, Maybe someone heard a muffled pop or saw smoke. In that moment of panic, Captain Briggs could have ordered everyone to evacuate, just until the danger passed. They take the lifeboat, tie it with a rope, drifting close by, waiting. But a sudden gust or a snapped line sets them adrift, helplessly watching as Mary Celeste slowly fades into the horizon. It makes sense, right? There were a few alcohol barrels that were indeed empty when the ship was found, and no signs of violence, no damage, just absence. But here's the catch. If an explosion was feared, wouldn't there at least be some burnt marks or a log entry about the danger? None. Not a single hint. The ship was clean. Too clean. Almost unnaturally calm. So yeah, maybe they panicked, or maybe something else made them leave. 2. The storm, seaquake, or waterspout theory. Now this one also sounds logical, but here's the catch. The Mary Celeste sailed through a part of the Atlantic where storms love to surprise sailors. A sudden waterspout, imagine a swirling tornado made of seawater, could have shaken the ship violently, drenching the deck and making everyone think it was sinking. If that happened, abandoning ship might have felt like survival. But here's the problem. When the Dei Gratia crew found the ship, it was still in good shape. The sails were damaged, yes, but nothing that screamed disaster. The hull wasn't cracked. The cargo was fine. Even the glass in the compass was broken, but not shattered by storm force, more like by a human hand. So was there really a storm, or just the fear of one? 3. Mutiny or piracy theory. Now we're getting darker. Some newspapers at the time jumped straight into the drama. The crew murdered the captain, or pirates seized the ship. You know how it goes. When people can't explain something, they blame greed or blood. Maybe a crew member snapped, killed Briggs and his family, then tried to escape. Or pirates boarded, took valuables, and left the ship adrift. Sounds cinematic, right? But again, the facts don't match the story. There was no blood, no struggle, no missing items. The captain's wife's jewelry, the logbook, the money, everything was still there. If it was mutiny, they wouldn't act like mutineers. If it was pirates, they were the politest ones in history. So that theory, it floats, but barely. 4. Insurance or salvage fraud theory. Now this one feels like something straight out of a business thriller. Some said it was all planned, an elaborate scam to claim insurance money. Either Briggs, the owners, or even the crew of the Dei Gratia staged the whole thing. Maybe the Mary Celeste was intentionally abandoned to make it look mysterious so they could collect the reward when it was heroically salvaged later. There's just one problem. The investigation in Gibraltar looked deep into this theory. The Dei Gratia crew were interrogated for months. Their salvage payment was tiny, not even close to what a fraud would risk everything for. And Briggs? He was a respected, deeply religious man, the type who wouldn't even cheat on a log entry, let alone insurance papers. So yeah, possible on paper, but unlikely in heart. 5. Paranormal or alien theories. My favorite category, the weird ones. You knew this was coming. Ghosts, sea monsters, aliens, the Bermuda Triangle, even though this didn't even happen near it. Writers and storytellers jumped on it. Some said the crew vanished into another dimension. Others said a sea creature dragged them off deck. Even Arthur Conan Doyle, the guy who created Sherlock Holmes, wrote a short story about it, calling it The Mystery of the Marie Celeste. Those tales turned the ship into a legend. And honestly, can you blame them? An empty ship, perfectly intact, meals still on the table. It feels supernatural. But let's be real, there's zero evidence. No monsters, no UFOs, just human confusion trying to make sense of silence. Still, I kind of get why people love this one. It's the romantic version, the one that lets your imagination keep sailing long after logic has dropped anchor. 6. Psychological panic or human error theory. This one, though, might be the saddest and maybe the truest. Imagine spending weeks at sea, Storms roaring, strange noises below deck, a baby crying, a captain exhausted. One wrong smell, one weird sound, and someone yells, "We're leaking," or "We're sinking." The captain, being cautious, might have ordered everyone into the lifeboat just for a moment. They tie a rope to the ship, maybe it breaks, maybe the wind changes. And then, silence. The Mary Celeste sails away, leaving them behind in the endless Atlantic. No monsters, no explosions, just one mistake that became a legend. It's terrifying, right? Because it's not impossible. It's human. And that's the thing about Mary Celeste. Every theory feels half right and half wrong. Maybe it was fumes, maybe panic, maybe something none of us could ever imagine. But you know what's stranger than all of it? The ocean never returned a single clue. No lifeboat, no bodies, nothing. Just an empty ship, forever caught between logic and legend. And that's why this mystery refuses to die. Because Mary Celeste isn't just a story about a missing crew, it's a reminder of how little control we really have when the sea decides to keep a secret. Next, let's talk about what happened to the ship itself, the strange fate of the Mary Celeste after this haunting discovery. After the storm of theories, investigations, and worldwide fascination settled a little, the Mary Celeste didn't just vanish into history. She lived on, still afloat, still carrying her cargo, and still shrouded in that eerie reputation. Imagine that. A ship already infamous, sailing the Atlantic with every sailor whispering about the ghostly mystery she carried in her timbers. After the official inquiry in Gibraltar cleared the crew of the Dei Gratia and confirmed that the Mary Celeste had been abandoned under unknown circumstances, she was returned to service. New owners took over, determined to make her profitable again. For a while, she continued her voyages across the Atlantic, carrying cargo, avoiding storms, and yet you could sense it. She was never quite the same. Sailors spoke in hushed tones whenever she docked, some claiming her decks carried a chill even on sunny days, some saying the rigging groaned as if under invisible weight. Her reputation as a cursed vessel grew steadily. Stories of sightings at sea, ships avoiding her path, and whispered superstitions made her more than a merchant ship. She had become a legend. Newspapers published letters from terrified sailors claiming they'd heard footsteps on the deck at night, or that the fog around her seemed unnatural, dense, and almost sentient. And yet, the Mary Celeste kept sailing. Years passed. Captains came and went. Cargo was loaded and unloaded. Life went on, but that shadow of mystery never lifted. Then came her final voyage in 1885. She was under the ownership of a man hoping to cash in on insurance. During a routine trip, the ship was intentionally grounded near Haiti. The plan? Make it look like an accident to collect the insurance money. But things went wrong. The ship sank. This time, there would be no more mysteries of disappearance, no crew to vanish, no one left to witness her final surrender to the Atlantic. The wreck itself was discovered years later, lying quietly beneath the waves, but by then, she was more a story than a ship. People came to realize that while the vessel herself could be touched, the mystery she carried, the fate of Captain Briggs, Sarah, their daughter Sophia, and the crew would remain forever beyond reach. And that's what fascinates me most. You see, ships can be repaired, hulls can be rebuilt, but stories are indestructible.
Mary Celeste's legend didn't sink with her hull. It sailed on, in newspapers, in books, in whispered tales among sailors, and in every imagination that dares to ponder what really happened to them. So, while Mary Celeste is gone, her shadow lingers, and every time you hear about ghost ships, abandoned decks, or unexplained vanishings at sea, her story looms quietly behind them, reminding us that some mysteries are never meant to be solved, only felt.
After the Mary Celeste faded from the headlines, you might think the mystery would quietly slip into history. But that's the thing about stories like this. They don't fade. They grow. They evolve. They become legends. Almost immediately, writers and journalists began spinning tales. Some reported the facts carefully, but others added flourishes, imagined conversations, and terrifying scenarios. Arthur Conan Doyle, yes, the same mind behind Sherlock Holmes, wrote a story inspired by the Mary Celeste, adding twists and turns that captured the imagination of readers worldwide. People were captivated by the idea of a ghost ship perfectly preserved with its crew vanished without a trace. Movies, novels, and documentaries followed, each retelling more dramatic than the last. Sailors whispered superstitions. "Never sail too close to the Azores in December," they'd say. Or the sea might claim your crew just as it did the Briggs family. Painters and illustrators depicted the ship in foggy waters, sails torn, a child's doll on deck, haunting images that cemented the Mary Celeste as an icon of maritime mystery. But it wasn't just fiction. The story influenced real sailors and real ships. Insurance companies tightened rules. Investigators studied abandoned vessels more carefully. The Mary Celeste became a benchmark, the ultimate example of how little we understand about the ocean and how easily human life can vanish in its vastness. And then there's the fascination itself. Why are we so drawn to unsolved mysteries? Honestly, I think it's because they let us imagine possibilities that stretch beyond everyday life. Pirates, storms, ghosts, or something we can't even name. Each theory offers a doorway into fear, curiosity, and awe. And Mary Celeste gives us all of that, wrapped in the story of one lost family and their loyal crew. Even today, when people hear ghost ship, most of them think of Mary Celeste. Its legend has sailed across oceans and generations. It teaches us something about our relationship with the unknown. We are drawn to it, terrified by it, but yet endlessly fascinated. So, here's the reflection I can't shake, and I want you to imagine it with me. The Atlantic is massive, endless, unforgiving, and somewhere out there, maybe, just maybe, the sea keeps its secrets perfectly. Sometimes it gives us hints, a ship, a logbook, a doll left behind, and then pulls the rest away, leaving questions that echo for centuries. Perhaps that's why the story of the Mary Celeste endures, not because we solved it, not because we can explain it, but because it reminds us how small we are against the vastness of the ocean, and how little we really know about the world around us. And maybe, just maybe, the ocean keeps its secrets best when it takes them whole.